I would like to welcome you all to the Benton County Board of Commissioners work session this morning. We have been beginning with a land acknowledgement. We live here on the lands, historic lands of the Calapooya peoples. These peoples were removed after the Willamette Treaty in the mid-1850s, but they are still with us at the Grand Ronde tribe and the Siletz Confederation tribe. And we respect the values of the Calapooya for the land and hope to honor them into the future. I am Zan Ojero, board chair, and will do a round robin introduction. I will pass the baton on to Vice Chair Nancy Weiss.
John, would you be able to close the door?
I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Vice Chair, and I'll pass it over to Pat.
Thanks.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Vance Cronin, County Council.
Alyssa Ross, Public Information Officer.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department. Teresa Farley, Board Staff.
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
April Holland, Health Department.
Greg Riddler, Benton County Undersheriff.
Hey, Portia Cordova.
Brian Lee, Emergency Manager.
Lilia Neville, Board of Commissioners staff.
Brian Bode, Director of the COG.
Okay, I think we have a few other staff with us: Erica Milo, Teresa Farley, Sherry Gates, and we also have one caller on the line. Is that you, Brian?
Yes, that is Brian.
Okay, thank you. And I see that Johan just arrived, our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator. Are there any announcements? And next is our time for comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public? The third item on our agenda is to review and approve said agenda. I do have some updates to the posted agenda, and that is that we will be conducting not one, but two executive sessions, one with respect to real estate and the second with respect to collective bargaining. And I do have one item that I'd like to add under other, and that is consideration of a support letter for extension funding, given that they were flatlined in the governor's budget, I believe. So that we will discuss under other, and it's in response to an email that came to all of us commissioners from Carolyn Ashton, if you want to look that up. Any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we will then dive into the work session with an update from our emergency operations and department operations centers, beginning with Brian Lee.
Do we want to approve the amended agenda?
We have been accepting it by affirmation or voting on it, but I'm fine with a vote. Go ahead.
So, move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you, Pat. Brian, the floor is yours.
All right, good morning, everyone. So just update from the EOC this week. We have a lot of clinics happening again, beginning Wednesday, so tomorrow, 11 to 7, Thursday, 9 to 6, Friday, 9 to 3, and then right now it's tentative, but Saturday it's going to be most likely 9 to 1, which of course could change again. Last week, we tried our first drop-in opportunity, and that went extremely well, so we're really happy with that strategy, and we'll continue to do so in the future. In addition to that, we are starting to mobilize and finalize our plans for the second dose at Monroe, which is happening Saturday, May 14th. And then, other than that, we're pivoting gears and starting our discussions and plans for demobilization of the county-level EOC. However, that does not, of course, mean there's not still going to be work going on related to vaccine and COVID. That'll just be more geared towards the health department, and we are really focusing on doing a nice, warm transfer and handoff. So we're not just going to pull the rug out. We're definitely doing things very systematically and process-oriented. So that's kind of our main focus here for the next month or so, is just getting ready for that to make it as clean as possible. We're targeting the end of May with some flexibility, of course, built in to make sure everything is stood up appropriately. In addition to that, it is, of course, May, so it's National Fire Preparedness Month and Awareness Month, so we are pivoting gears on the emergency management side to start our preparations for wildfire season, doing outreach, doing preparedness presentations, and also getting EOC staff geared up and lined up for any sort of fall or later in the summer activation for wildfire. And that's all I have in the report.
Thank you, Brian. Are there questions for Brian about any of the EOC activities? Okay. I have one quick question. Brian, are you actively involved in planning the transition to vaccination occurring primarily in doctors' offices and pharmacies, or is that something that is going to happen more organically? Perhaps that's a question for April to answer when she speaks. Okay.
Yes, I was going to say I'll defer to April when she gets to that point, because that's more of her question. We are engaged in all of that, though. That way we can utilize existing infrastructure to stand up vaccine efforts and ongoing COVID response efforts. That's really the goal, is to have our community take care of itself. But I'll let April answer the rest of that later. Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Suzanne and April, you are up next.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. I want to echo what Brian was describing, that just because the need for a mass vaccination ongoing approach comes to a close does not mean that we are anywhere near done, and this will continue to evolve over time. We don't have the crystal ball, but we know more now than we have ever known. And I think it is safe to say that even in a best-case scenario, we will be engaged deeply in this work for at least another year, if not longer. So thinking through what we can project to be a hopeful evolution of this work is that we would be moving to a much more distributed model of vaccination. The Health Department, of course, Public Health Division would still be responsible for leading and coordinating that effort, for the reporting, for the equity components, for reaching out to the underserved, and working with all of our partners to ensure that it is going smoothly across the county. At some point, boosters will probably be on our agenda, so helping to coordinate that effort with the Oregon Health Authority and across the county. And of course, we do not project any diminished need for contact tracing and case investigation, a normal part of our communicable disease work, even in non-COVID times. So as we begin to plan for demobilization of the EOC, I think recognizing that this is not a short-term emergency, that hasn't been for a long time, and we certainly know it's not going to end in 3 months or 6 months. In terms of our level of effort we will need to apply, it will just change and become different, is that we really need to make this a core part of the health department's work. So what I am in the process of talking with Brian and April and Leah and others about is how we create our request for resources and transition in a way that sort of normalizes this work for the next year or two in the health department, because I'm mindful that it is not just the rest of the county staff that need to get back to their regular work. It is also the people who work in the public health division and the health department that need to get back to their regular work, which has also been largely set aside for diverted focus on this COVID effort. So I want to just, as I hope I always do, call out Brian for his exceptional leadership, also Sierra, both from emergency management with the county. We've learned so much as a part of this process that we can take forward, and are very grateful not only for all that they have provided with this EOC structure and their leadership and their skills, but also that they are so thoughtfully assisting us with a gradual transition plan that will entail a warm handoff. And of course, we know that they'll always be available to us for expertise if we need their consultation as well.
That's great. I have another question that's related to that, and that is that when it comes to FEMA dollars are linked to emergency declarations. So in this case, at the state and county levels. But as you say, Suzanne, this pandemic is not going away in 3 months or 6 weeks or anything like that. And it is going to be, the work is going to be with us as a public health department for a while. So is there discussion going on at OHA and the federal level to kind of normalize the funding and move away from FEMA funding for this pandemic?
I believe there is, Commissioner. I don't know the details on that. April may have some more information. We do know that the FEMA funding will come to an end at a point, and I think we've always sort of assumed that that's been a stopgap measure because it's something that the federal administration had within its power to do right away for everyone. There's more I think we have to learn about the American Rescue Plan Act funds. There are some designated categories for public health in there, and we haven't received detail about what that's going to look like and what we can use it for, but certainly it would take us through some of our efforts in the next biennium. And then it's more a matter of what will come forth from the federal or the state level to help support this work. And we're very aware that everything that we believe we need to do in order to prevent backsliding and keep moving forward to protect health and safety in our economy is also contingent upon having a funding source to support it. So even as we put together our resource request for ongoing work, we're being very judicious and not asking for one more resource than we think we need to be able to keep a strong handle on this. And then as we learn more about funding, I think that will help us to move forward with actually putting that resource plan in place. But yeah, I share your concern about when that FEMA funding comes to an end.
Thank you. April.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay? Great. Got a new headset on today. Nice to be with you all, and I'm happy to give you an update on vaccination, but I would like to start with acknowledging our case counts and the situation there as well. So in our previous 2-week period, we did receive 198 cases, which will tip Benton County into the extreme risk category. The additional metrics of statewide COVID hospitalization have been met. There are more than 300 cases hospitalized in the state, and the increase has been greater than 15% in the last 7 days. So Benton County will move into the extreme risk category on Friday. I just wanted to take a moment because I think it can be really confusing for people to for us to wrap our minds around the fact that there are really good things happening and really bad things happening with COVID simultaneously. On one hand, people are being vaccinated, which is wonderful. 55% of all Benton County residents have had at least one dose of COVID vaccine, and Benton is leading the state in the rate of vaccine administration. Almost 40% of county residents have been fully immunized. This level of vaccination will help to slow transmission, as those vaccinated individuals will be unlikely to be infected or to pass infection along. And on the other hand, we now have spread of a COVID strain that is at least 50% more transmissible than the original virus. That's the B117 or variant, or sometimes called the UK variant, and it's being detected with more frequency. And our level of vaccination is just not yet sufficient to prevent this and other strains from sweeping across the state. Additionally, children under age 16 are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. We may see fairly soon that the 12 to 15 year age range is added to eligibility. However, as schools increase in-person instruction, more cases are being detected right now. One final point that I think is a contributor, it's ultimately a good thing. Oregon has fortunately not been impacted like many other states. So there isn't as much natural immunity from previous infection as there is in many areas. This is certainly not to say that there should have been more infection, as with those cases come more hospitalizations and deaths, but we may find that Oregon may need to vaccinate at a higher rate to achieve widespread immunity. All of this said, we've got the good, we've got the bad. The recent modeling shows that with strong adherence to guidance, this should be a short surge lasting just another few weeks. And Governor Brown's goal of opening up by the end of June is still attainable if we can suppress this current surge and continue vaccination. So here's hoping for a very short period in the extreme risk category, and moving forward with more vaccination. I just want to urge everyone who's eligible to be vaccinated as quickly as possible so that we can reach that point to stop transmission. I think I can move on to vaccination efforts unless you have questions for me about cases.
Yeah, April, so Benton County goes into extreme this Friday. How do we drop down a notch? Is that dependent on hospitalization rate across the state, or what's the, what do we have to look forward to, I guess?
Great, yeah, great question, Commissioner Malone. So the governor's office has done away with the warning week for at least another few weeks here. So if Benton County were to drop below 200 cases per 100,000 residents, then we could move back to high. I must say that given just the last few days of cases, I'm not going to be extremely hopeful to move back immediately after 1 week. However, given some time to get the known cases isolated, people tested, quarantined, it's a process that takes a bit of time to slow down spread. But there's no warning week, so we wouldn't be sitting unnecessarily, necessarily in another week.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I would really emphasize your point of we can do something about this, and hopefully our folks, if you want to help our local businesses, if you want to help schools get vaccinated and observe the protocols as needed going forward, and we can do something about this. We're not victims, and we need to get that word around, because I assume our vaccination numbers per day at Reefer are dropping. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd love to get into more detail about that, but we are starting to see a slowdown.
So, kind of the big picture is the people that wanted to get vaccinated and were chomping at the bit, and now we have, in some instances anyway, more vaccine than we have customers, and it's time to for the rest of our community to step up.
That's right, Commissioner. We're definitely seeing a shift there. And yes, I'd like to talk more about our efforts to navigate that shift. Do you have any other questions about cases for me?
No.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
I had read something from the governor's office talking about assistance for the businesses that are impacted by moving into extreme risk. And I was just curious if we have any updates on that or any information that we can share with those businesses at this point.
Kate's with us, and when she gets her update, she can provide more of that, I hope.
Great.
In terms of cases, April, are we seeing any particular patterns or any clusters occurring here? I know there's been quite a bit of concern about churches in Lynn County and schools in some counties. I just was wondering whether there's any comment you can provide.
Thank you. Yes, we are seeing an increase in cases in schools. Certainly, we have some outbreaks associated with sports, and one long-term care facility outbreak that continues to trickle along, and a couple of workplace outbreaks. I'd say that a big contributor here is schools, and the majority of our schools are doing a fantastic job of communicating with us, of communicating with the families, and ensuring that quarantine guidance is shared, and then our case investigators and contact tracers confirm the dates of quarantine and reach out to see if any support is needed for the families who are affected.
Thank you, April.
You are welcome. So in terms of vaccinations, vaccinations are going well, but we are experiencing a shift, as I'm sure you've heard. The state and nation are sort of heading in the right way. We're nearing that saturation point of the people who really, as you said, Commissioner Mullen, we're champing at the bit to get an appointment, and we need to start thinking about how to bring vaccine to people to make vaccination convenient, and we're also working a lot on vaccine confidence. Overall, Oregon has vaccinated almost 1.7 million people, but the 7-day running average of vaccination is decreasing right now. Benton County, as I mentioned previously, we've got 55% of all residents. That's not just the eligible residents who have received at least a dose. And if I estimate the 16 and under population, it's about 65% of all eligible folks, which is good. I'd like to see it about 10% higher at least. Some of the efforts that Brian mentioned that we explored drop-in clinics with the mass vaccine clinic, and we had a lot of success with it. And so almost every day, that first dose appointments are available. Drop-ins, some space is made for drop-ins. It's been really successful, and we're going to continue to utilize that as long as it's working. We continue to follow the evidence and look at data to see where our efforts need to be focused. We are working with Samaritan Mobile Medicine. We've got the 2 rural clinics, one in Blodgett and one in Kings Valley that we're working on now, which will be mid-May here. We're working on finalizing a youth event at Research Stadium sometime later in May, more of a targeted youth event with the schools involved. And if we do move to the 12 to 15-year-old age frame, then we can incorporate that. Should be festive with music and activities. A lot of fun planning to do on that. Other targeted efforts continue. Our vaccination coordinator, Cindy D'Angelillo, was able to go out to Miller Timber and vaccinate 20 people. She went out last Friday and vaccinated at the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center a couple of homebound people as well, and some adults in custody. We're working on Houses of Faith right now to see if we can get the mobile clinic to go out there. So we do a lot of outreach, as you heard in the last time we were all together. Many times, because we're offering a menu of options to our partners, many of them are happy to have just access to research. So when we find that that's not the first choice or not as easy, then we sort of start moving toward the next step of getting a mobile clinic into a place. So we're working with the OSU Cultural Center as well to ensure access to research. And we still have our community partner scheduling. So several community partners will have spots tomorrow at the clinic, and the demand for that has sort of waned a bit, but we continue to reach out and schedule anyone who is interested. I just want to share a bit of positive news and boast about the great team here for just one moment on one thing. As you know, we rely on FEMA for funding, and we participate in various assessments as required. We had an accessibility assessment about a month ago, and that was very successful. We got a really good review on that. And most recently, FEMA rated Benton's equity report as excellent and requested permission to share it with other applicants so they could see the level of detail and a shining example of what that should look like.
Thank you. Congratulations. I also wanted to let you know that at one of my meetings yesterday, a colleague from the Benton Community Foundation Board was gushing with praise about the clinic and its organization, and he had not only gotten his vaccination there, but had volunteered a couple of shifts, so he was very, very impressed with the well-run operation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. That's all I have for you today. I'm sure there are so many more things I could talk about, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there questions for April? If not, we'll move on to Lilia and April. It may be that other things emerge as we round out our discussion, but thank you. That was a great report.
Thanks, everyone.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, April. Okay, so I have a couple of updates for you all. So I took all this time to get prepared, and now I can't find it. Okay, here we go. We're getting there. So I've got about, I guess, 2 weeks or so worth of kind of reporting that I wanted to just bring you all up to speed on. I think last time I was in front of you, we talked a bit about numbers. So today, I think I'll just brief you on what we've been up to and what our strategy and approach is moving forward. So in the recent past, we have one of our big deliverables that we've been pushing for to launch for quite some time is our partner webpage. So this is a webpage that basically has an archive of all of the communication tactics that the JIC has either authored, designed, produced, etc., and we've made them available to our partners off of the county website. We've seen in research and heard from others that it's better to have, for example, like news in a church bulletin or other neighborhood flyers, that type of thing. And so creating this partner webpage allows us to be able to easily share county public health information and get it out through a variety of other channels that aren't necessarily owned by Benton County. So that was a big lift, and we got that launched last week, and so we're really excited to get that out there in the community. You've heard from April about the variants. We continue to monitor and maintain situational awareness about variants and try and weave that information into our ongoing messaging as well. We're continuing to monitor changes for eligibility for the Pfizer vaccine. That 12 to 15-year-old age range would be a new set of messages that we're going to need to be considerate of. And then really in the last week, I think one of the biggest highlights has been the number of pivots that we've needed to make out in the field when it's come to trying to get as many shots in arms as possible. So I think Brian mentioned that we moved to a drop-in appointment model last week. It was extremely successful, not only from a patient standpoint, but from a earned media standpoint. We were able to get the GT out there, and they did an article with someone who came by for a walk-in appointment and really raised awareness to that avenue. So that was a great success from last week, and we're going to see more of those drop-in appointments, those drop-in days at our research vaccine clinic. We continue to have a variety of outreach and support needs at the specific events, the clinic events that we're supporting. In the last couple of weeks, we've had an increased number of individuals that need to have their vaccine filmed in order to return to their home country. And so this does create a little bit of a logistical switcheroo, if I may use that word, because there are no photos allowed on the vaccine floor. So to move from no photos allowed to then to need to create a station where we can film the administration of a vaccine is just something that our field PIOs are working with. So a lot of fun stuff happening out in the field. And I think all other updates have really been managed or touched on by Brian or April in terms of our ongoing operations. We are going to be working towards a demobilization at the end of the month in terms of the Joint Information Center. So more to come on that, I'm sure, when we see you all at our next report out. But happy to take any questions.
I had one, and it might be more for April. I know the Johnson one-shot vaccine is back on the be used. Are we? Do we have some Johnson & Johnson that we can use it? I mean, I think of some of the rural clinics and where it would make a lot of sense to just have one visit necessary.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that, Commissioner. We do have Johnson & Johnson vaccine and it is being used right now. At this time, we don't have it slated for the 2 rural clinics that we're working on. We're noticing, as you know, we learned with Resource Stadium that a lot of people are insistent that they receive the type of vaccine that they feel is right for them, no matter if we say, you know, how we provide the education. So we for now, one strategy will be to allow that choice as much as is possible, and that will be mainly within the Research Mass Clinic so that people can schedule their own vaccine type. We are utilizing J&J, and honestly, despite the very reasonable concern that I and others have had about people being hesitant to receive Johnson & Johnson, the demand appears to not have really shifted much in my estimation. So it's really nice to see that people still want that one and done shot and understand that the risk of a severe outcome is incredibly low.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lilia. Appreciate the report.
Of course. Thank you, Commissioners.
Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Nice to see everyone on this fine May 4th. So a handful of updates for you. Of course, when we got word about Benton County going to the extreme level, we were instantly thinking about businesses and making sure that they had the information they needed and were able to pivot. Heather, interestingly enough, had already started a newsletter with that headline, fearing that was where we were headed, and it turned out to be true. But I did want to share a couple items. First, to answer Commissioner Wise's question, the governor did indicate that she is setting aside money for businesses in counties who have to move to the extreme level. Initially, it was thought that money would go into the Business Oregon Rent Relief Program, but I think there's been a handful of challenges with that program. In fact, I was on a call and supported a different path forward, and so hearing from Sarah Means last night, it looks like the governor is going to distribute those funds directly to counties. So I'll make sure to get with Marion, and I suspect there will be a discussion with you all as to then how we want to implement those funds and get them in the hands of businesses. But I can tell you there's still a great need out there, especially for just direct financial assistance. There are some other programs open now that I'm going to talk about in a second, but some of them have been missing some folks, so we think there's still an opportunity. So we're just grateful that the governor saw the need that these businesses that are having to shut back down as the risk level increases and basically is creating that path through. So more information to come on that, I think, very shortly. Sarah seemed to imply even in the next couple days we should know what those funds look like and then what parameters will be put on those. So we'll be happy to work with you about that. I kind of think about April. I like the way April talks about, the good and the bad, and there's both. So let's talk a little bit about the good for a little bit. We do have a number of programs that are open now. The first I want to make folks aware of is our office received our second shipment of multiple pallets of personal protective equipment. We are handing out PPE every Friday in May across the street at the Madison Avenue meeting room. We're going to do that from 10 to 4. Heather and Catherine have worked out a really excellent contactless pickup system. We've got masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and dispensers, all sorts of good stuff. At the end, I'll post a link to our website over in the chat so folks can have it, because if you don't remember all the details, you can always visit our website at yescorvallis.org to get information. But free PT on Fridays. There are also a number of programs open right now. The American Rescue Plan Act included funding for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That has just opened. This is a program that is a direct application through the SBA. They haven't, and I'm sorry, I just said it's open. It actually has not yet opened, but there's information on the SBA website, so restaurants can begin to look at that, understand what they'll need, but that's just about to get going for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Business Oregon does have the second round of their commercial rent relief program open. As a reminder, this is a program for businesses and landlords. Interestingly enough, the landlord actually has to apply, which is where we had a little bit of tension, but I do know some folks have applied. It's a lottery system, and if folks have tenants who are behind on their commercial rent, landlord is able to apply a lottery system about whether or not they get the funds. Finally, also the Benton County Community Development Block Grant Fund for low to moderate income employees is just about to open. We're getting really close, and want to give a shout out to the Benton County team and Rachel Maddox-Hughes for her help to get that going. Corvallis, we've already stood up ours, opened it, and closed it. So the Corvallis one is done and complete, and now we'll be able to get going on the Benton County one for the folks in the rural parts of the county. I wanted to just speak real briefly. When we talk about businesses going into extreme, and I think you guys know the challenges that folks are facing now, and again, now that we're back to this every week, up or down, this is really tough for folks, and I think you guys know why. I mean, we're talking about potential changes with not a whole lot of notice, and looking at scheduling, hiring, ordering food, getting things set up, taking things down, all of that occurs. So we're just trying to really get out. I know Jerry is going to go hit the pavement and pass out some flyers so folks are aware of where they can go to get information on the risk levels, about the PPE and the other programs we have available. To that end, I do want to if there's businesses watching, I want to let folks know that the governor did revise some of the outdoor seating requirements changed in the extreme risk level, so there's a little more flexibility in that space. And I want to remind folks also, if you are in Corvallis, we are still offering the business right-of-way program. So if you're a business, and of course the weather is getting better, you want to expand into that external space, let us know and please contact us. And the city of Corvallis still has open grants for our sidewalk cafe permit program that allow businesses to, do business on the city sidewalks. So all of those items are going on. Last two items, not related to the pandemic, but I did want to share. I know Joe's not on the call, but we are just about to open up the electric bike grant that we got through Pacific Power. Really exciting. We're getting a lot of interest. Those are for low-income folks and looking at alternate forms of mobility around town. And then our Climate Action Advisory Board did just open up their revolving loan program. This is for 501c3s and 501c6s. So again, I know that's a ton of information. I'm going to put a link to our website, yescorvallis.org, over on the side. If folks have questions, of course, you guys can always reach out to me or anybody on our team, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have this morning, Commissioners.
Thank you. That was a lot. Any questions for Kate this morning? I'm glad to hear that there's a little bit more flexibility in the outdoor seating under this most recent iteration of extreme risk. I was so sad to see those numbers come across this weekend, and very much looking forward to seeing what we can do to get this disease rate down again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, continued props to your amazing team and all the work that everybody at the county and our partners and volunteers are doing to get folks vaccinated. I go in on Cinco de Mayo for my second vaccine, so my plan is my 410 vaccine and then maybe a margarita to top it off.
Kate, as you're talking to local businesses, I guess I'm going back to the vaccination question and some reluctance. Are local business folks aware how important it is for the community to get vaccinated?
It's funny, I think they are. If anything, I think they are more acutely aware maybe than some of our general population, because their personal livelihoods are at stake when we talk about the risk levels. And so we do think that is the case, but we are continuing to work to share out the great information that's coming out of the JIC and Lilia's team, and kind of coordinating that still with that, like, hey, let's help Benton County stay open, that sort of thing. But yeah, my read, Commissioner Malone, is that they're acutely aware of it.
Well, and I would assume a lot of these businesses have email lists and able to contact their customers, potential customers, and that might be another kind of impetus for the more reluctant folks to get vaccinated.
No, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. If we move on, this was a good and informative report about the Emergency Operations Department Operations Center, and we are shifting gears completely to talk about greenhouse gas emissions. We are welcoming Sean Lilia back to speak to us on this topic.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Jen Brown is also here with us, as well as Michael. And so our whole team is here for today's presentation.
Excellent. Welcome, Jen and Michael also.
Great. Okay, so I also want to warn you, Commissioners, that I had one of the most alarming things happen to me this morning. One of my direct reporting employees, Sean, texted me and said, "Oh my God, did you hear that explosion? We have no power. The world is ending." He didn't say the part about the world is ending, but that was my emotional reaction, and it really terrified me. All is well. There is a fire and a power line down behind Sean's house, but it appears he has his power back, and we're ready to roll for today's presentation. So, sorry to share that, Sean, but it was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. I was like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. There's been an explosion. Okay, so this year, Commissioners, we're here with the greenhouse gas emissions presentation, but it's a little bit different this year, and I think it's pretty exciting, actually, why it's different. So the difference is that we're going to be presenting this in two parts this year. In the past, we've shown the numbers and we've discussed the context and implications all at once. This year, we actually have so many pieces of context and implications that we feel that we need to share. We needed to break it up into two sections. So today we're going to be looking really big picture about changes in terms of our inventory methodology, as well as looking at some contextual changes and what implications they might have for policy setting in the future, specifically related to facilities, commuting, those sorts of things. Then in 2 weeks, we're going to come back and we're going to really dive into the numbers. Today, you're going to see numbers. Don't get me wrong. We're going to show you numbers. But you'll, Commissioners who have seen this presentation before will have been used to seeing all of the numbers in a really, really detailed way. That's actually going to come on the 18th, and we're going to, like I said, keep it really high level today. When we come back on the 18th, not only are we going to show you the nitty-gritty in terms of our numbers, we're going to talk about our successes that we've had across the organization with regard to things that we're doing that are positively impacting the inventory, like things in facilities, those types of things, as well as our program's intentions to update our climate action plan to align more completely with the inventory, and some thoughts we have about that. So if you ask any questions and we're kind of like, hey, that's in the second part of the presentation, please have patience with us, because we really have tried to bifurcate in a place that makes sense, so it's digestible, frankly, and that you all can really grapple with some of the bigger policy issues that we want to point out. So with that, Sean, I think I want to just turn it over to you, and yeah, great.
Sounds good. I don't know who was the official presenter, but if I could get the presentation rights. Oh, wow, you are fast. Okay. While I'm sharing my screen, I wanted to share, yes, that was a little bit eventful in the last 20 minutes. So between the coffee I had this morning and what just happened, we should be able to get through this whole presentation in about 4 minutes. So anyway, I want to give some context before we get going. Commissioner Odro and Commissioner Malone, you've seen us do this last year. Commissioner Weiss, this is going to be very similar to what you hear from Scott Dibzad, Corvallis' sustainability coordinator, his annual sustainability report, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. And just as context, or just as background, our current county goal is to have our emissions be half of 2010's numbers by 2030 and be net zero by 2050. We're going to get more into those details, as Olivia said, in 2 weeks, but just to make sure we're all kind of on the same page. And the second was, you'll also see Michael Gardner-Brown on our grid, I guess. And he is our climate action intern, and he's been with us for a couple of years. We're going to get into that. So why I'm telling you this is, if I ever say the word we, yeah, don't kid yourself, it was Michael. He's just been fantastic this past year, 2 years. So let's dive in. Okay. So as Olivia said, we wanted to make sure that this is a high-end overview and to kind of walk through the rationale of what we did. This is not the time to dive into data. That's going to be in 2 weeks. However, as an economist, trust me, there's going to be graphs. You're not escaping. I did want to say one thing is we apologize for getting these materials to you so late, but it's part of what's been happening over the past few weeks. You're going to see what we sent on Friday is a little different than what you're going to see today, a couple of slides here and there. But as this year has gone on, and Michael and I, and working with Corvallis, has created this new inventory and this new methodology, every time we find a new data set, really a reference, it just opens up all these policy implications and everything we can, all the different things we can do. And this has been very exciting, but it has been week by week. So I wanted to begin with that one. But again, keeping it at a high level, we've been hearing over the past months about creating this suite of lenses, a 2040 lens, Dawn's on here, an equity lens, and now a climate lens. And that's really the intent of today's goal, is that our program is trying to empower you, to give you the tools to see these policy implications through these different lenses. So that's what we're going to try to be as high up there as we can. So let's dive in. So today we're going to be talking about all the different things that occurred over 2020. And as a spoiler alert, when you see COVID as the third topic, that should give you some idea of the magnitude of what we did over this past year. So the first one is we're going to dive into the inventory protocol and how its profound implications on electricity and fleet fuel. I would say water, waste, and natural gas stay the same. But again, the almost ridiculous impact of 4,500 NS electricities, as well as some tweaks with the law enforcement building. We'll dive into the inclusion of fairgrounds, which is something we've been trying to do for a while. And then we'll dive into the implications of COVID. Finish up with some renewable energy, just one quick slide, because we're going to hit that in 2 weeks. And then provide you with a bridge between today's discussion and the more fine-tuning that we'll get in a couple of months. So that's kind of what we're going to walk through today. So this is the new updated carbon emissions, net carbon emissions from 2010 to 2020. So I'm going to stay on this slide for a little bit and walk you through all the implications. First, again, to make sure that we're all on the same page, I'm hoping you can see my mouse. We'll start with net. Counties our equation is our emissions minus what we purchase in blue sky equals our total net emissions. And the MTCO2e is metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. There are several greenhouse gases. We normalize that into a single number. That's what that means. Secondly, you will see on the right-hand side this convergence. Just as a point of reference, the 2001-77 is our new way of our methodology, our new inventory. Michael and I thought that these would converge. We didn't know they'd overlap, so that's why I colored this blue and this green is the way the old version, our old methodology. This right here is all of COVID and 4,500 research, and we're going to dive into why that is here. Thirdly, you will see that this line is higher. That is because of more refined coefficients of our Pacific Power's energy use, our energy mixture, coupled with additions of fairgrounds and how we address law enforcement or LUB. That's why it's higher. Next, what's really exciting is that these are not parallel. That is to say, things are happening behind the equations that for the first time we can capture. And this has been really exciting and what we've been doing over the past year to really fine-tune this. And lastly, on this slide, you will see for the first time since 2011, our total net emissions are below 2010. Unfortunately, it took COVID to get us there, but hopefully that kind of gives you the magnitude of what we're thinking if we're going to reach our target goal, which is somewhere around here, which is half of 2010. Before we go too much further, I didn't know if there were any questions. We're going to get into all the details, but I wanted to start with this is why it's so important that we talk about it up front, and we get into the details in 2 weeks. Okay. Next. Now it's the rationale. Why did we do this? So when we started this in, was it 2017? We started with 2016. What we used was our first intern, a climate action intern came in, and we used EPA spreadsheet. Why? Because it was easy. You throw in a whole bunch of numbers, our electricity bills, our utility bills, you hit enter, and it spews out what our emissions is. The challenge, though, is as we move forward, we're more maturing, and we're bringing on more facilities, and we're becoming more refined. So the problem with the EPA is you only get one coefficient, or everything behind the scenes is just one number, and you really can't change it. As the last 3 or 4 years, as we brought on additional facilities, and we're getting more and better data, we needed something else. So that's what required this new protocol. Corvallis uses one from ICLEI, that's the International Council for Environmental Initiatives. The challenge, though, is they don't give you the spreadsheet. You got to build it yourself. And so this is something that we have been, just with me, just kind of going through this whole thing is, number one, we should be on the same page with Corvallis. We should have much more refinement, but we never had the capacity. So that comes us into the second, and that is this unique opportunity, and that is primarily Michael. Because 2 things. One, because of COVID and other issues, he got around, he's been here for 2 years. And why that's so important is usually our interns come in for the first year, and then they do the calculations, and by the time they're experts, they leave. Well, now we had Michael for 2 full years, and that gave him the opportunity to be a seasoned veteran. And the second one is, I don't believe Microsoft at all, because Michael created Excel. I've never seen anyone with so much acumen in this spreadsheet, and what he has developed in partnership with Corvallis. Corvallis is now using what we did. And it's been a wonderful collaboration with Corvallis so that we're all on the same page. That brings us to the third step, the third bullet. So far, we've been kind of playing in the kind of the same sandbox, but not the same toys. Now, our numbers are the same as Corvallis, and externally and internally, ours are the same working with Keith and Fleet. Our coefficients are all the same. And that is really exciting news. I'm a total dork with data stuff, but it's nice the fact that we're the same with Corvallis, and in the new database that Keith has those same coefficients. Why am I boring you? Because we are so more precise, accurate, and I'm so much more confident in the numbers now, especially moving forward, and we have a really nice foundation to springboard. What are the implications as far as the numbers? That is, we do have significant electricity and fleet fuel emission calculations they've changed. understate that. Our usage contributions have significantly changed, and it does allow us now, whatever the Keith wants to use, whatever fuel, we can insert that coefficient. However, Pacific Power's resource mix changes, we can add that coefficient. It's just every year we can be better and really capture our grade. I want to stop for a second before we dive into each one, if anybody has any questions so far, and also say, we're going to do this chunk by chunk. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it while we address each one. So, questions so far? Okay.
Sure, just congratulations. It's very exciting that we have finally gotten to this point where we can be a little bit more nuanced in our approach.
Yeah, I was going to say this later on, Commissioner, but I'll say it right now. There is no way that we can do this without your support of having climate action insurance, the support from IT to do the utility tracker, specifically Jennifer Nantu, all the work that Rebecca Taylor did before I even got here to do the utility tracker, all these different, and Randy and Tally who are entering this information in. This is a huge team effort. And secondly, with Keith's database, your investment in that and your support of those, the ripple effect is gargantuan. You can surf on those ripples. Yes, it makes his database better, but and Michael's been more than happy to hop on here. What used to take him weeks took him hours because of that new database. So that is really, it's so nice to have all this, and it's been a long time in the making, and it is exciting. So again, being a broker about graphs and numbers, it is exciting. Okay, let's dive in. So the big one about those coefficients, the resource mix, when I say that, I mean Pacific Power has coal and hydro and nuclear and solar and all those. You match all that up, that's the resource, that's that coefficient I'm talking about. EPA uses a regional average that reaches all the way down to New Mexico. And this has always been just a little splinter in my brain that when I present to you, it's just always been a lowball number. Now we can actually get a specific coefficient of carbon intensity from utilities, both Pacific and consumer, and be much more refined. Again, why am I boring you? Because Pacific Power is planning on decreasing the carbon intensity of their fuel mix. This is huge. So again, we're reducing our energy use, we're buying and generating the solar, and what's left is also decreasing behind the scenes because the electricity we're getting is being less intensive. How can I prove that? Because of this. As you'll see, that's why this line is so flat with the old EPA, because that coefficient was the same. Now we're kind of bouncing around and showcasing that we are becoming more efficient, and the fuel use is also, the mixture is becoming less. And that's evident with this. Again, for the first time, our emissions are lower in 2020 than they were in 2010. So again, as Pacific Power becomes cleaner, we reap the benefits. Same exact thing from fleet. So the green line is how we calculated with EPA. This downtick right here between 1083 and 1017, that's all COVID, and we're going to get to that in a few slides. The real issue is this blue line. Now we can go in and be far more precise in the coefficient of the different fuel uses. This is especially evident in 2018. We were bouncing around between diesel, R99, and B20, all these things because of distribution issues. Now, every time Keith gets something, we can nail that down precisely. The downside. The big downside is the database that was used that came on in 2019. Keith warned us last year and confirmed this year he has just no confidence in employing the same approach previously. So it's a huge bummer. We're going to reap the benefits moving forward. We can't back half to 2010 with any integrity or rigor. It's just one of the things that happen. But it's good moving forward, and that's all I really care. So it's nice that those two are moving forward in a more precise way. Okay, let's have some fun with 4500. So last March, I get a call from my contact at Pacific Power who does all of the Blue Sky. She calls me and says, Sean, something really weird's happening. You're no longer a champion, and we just looked at 4500. This can't be right, right? It is right. I don't know if those servers are powering North America or what, but you can see here as a comparison, a typical yearly kilowatt use at the fairgrounds is 550,000. 4,500 is 1.2 million. And that's twice as fairgrounds, and they're normally 10,000 to 1,100 events a year. And making it even worse, that excludes January, because we didn't pick it up until January, so we didn't get a bill until mid-February. So 10 and a half months is well more than twice the fairgrounds. Again, why does that matter? And we're kind of building a case for recommendation we have for you that we're going to get in a couple of slides. But if you see this reduction, without 4,500, that is a 16.7% reduction. Keep that in your mind, about 17% reduction. With is a 43% increase in emissions because of that ridiculous skewed electricity use from 4,500. So this is why it kind of scared Michael and I, and this is why we kept going back and forth. And again, my apologies for you. The presentation you were seeing on Friday is not the exact same as today, but Jen, Lily, and I were talking up until Friday. Michael and I were working on Sunday and yesterday. These are the kind of the things that hit in the back of your mind. So what? My favorite two-word question. The short-term so what is not much. Once Pfizer leaves in a few weeks, I think call it to late May, early June, whenever they leave, that is going to plummet to zero. Then we start the construction and the moving and the commissioning. And commissioning is when everyone's moved in, a third party, in this case, Brightworks, is going to come in and make sure all the systems are working as they should. And that's also required by law. So making sure out of the gate we're good. Side note, what was interesting when Paul and I were talking is that because the solar panel is already on, and if Verdi or a lot of the constructions don't use our plug load, we could actually not only be net zero, but we could be feeding electricity on to the grid. And if that's the case, we can add that onto our emissions and reducing on that. So the weird way that's really exciting. Yeah. So the bottom line is the solar in the short term is not much, but we're not going to normalize until 2022 when everybody's in. And I apologize, I don't even know what departments are going in now. I know that's fluctuating, but by 2022 we should be pretty much there. It also means, and here we go into the policy implications, the critical importance it is to have policies that absolutely maximize our usage and that we have the means and we appreciate the greenhouse gas impacts of these decisions. Commissioners, I cannot thank you enough to reach this goal to require LEED at 4,500. And to have these things that we're requiring these kind of research, as well as the health, I'm not putting the health aside, but there's conversations about climate change. So those are the things as we have these policy conversations and these practices, these are the big ticket items. These are the really, really big things that are significantly moved the dial. The real so what is on the policy and our inventory. What this whole Pfizer thing did was, for the first time, it really forced me as an inventory to think, what does the protocol mean? With EPA, it wasn't even apparent at the time. It's just we established inadvertently a protocol. If we get a bill, it goes into the inventory. For Pfizer, as well as we have tenants in other facilities, we have extension, dial-a-bus, we have tenants, which is something that Corvallis doesn't really have. I've been talking with Scott, they just don't have the same issue. So we came up with a proposal for this inventory, and that is, if we don't control it, and this is exactly what the EPA protocol says, if we don't control it, we don't count it. The local government, if they don't control the tenants, then it shouldn't be counted. And what we're looking at, again, talking with Scott, is if it's a normal office, like extension, they don't have servers doing what Pfizer is, or a dial-a-bus, it's just a normal operating. But if we have a tenant in the future that is doing what Pfizer is doing, then we don't count that. That normalizes everything. It allows us to more appropriately address what we're doing, and it doesn't skew like what this is. And what I'm thinking of is, again, why is this important? As we think about a potential, I can talk about the bond bill. I'm sorry, Leah. We're not in the, okay, sorry, I don't want Vance mad at me.
You can't, Sean, to clarify, you can't talk about the levy, but you may talk about the bond. Yep, go ahead.
So the central bond, thank you. So the bond coming up with a new correctional facility, however you want to call it, equity center, resource center, we may have outside sources. I don't know, but it is something to empower you commissioners with a lens to start thinking about how that's going to operate. So I want to stop here and get your feedback on our proposed recommendations to follow ICLEI's protocol to say if we have a tenant that so skews what we are in control of, that we take that out of our inventory so that we're comparing apples to apples.
So no to server farms, but standard office use would be fine. But what that does change also is that we also have been looking at emissions per employee, and if we include our tenant spaces, that means that we really do need to average that out over more people as well.
You bring a very good point. In a couple weeks, we're going to attempt to do the per square foot and employee. The challenge we have is that the actual goal is pure numbers. And so that's kind of, we're kind of going back and forth to see what is technically our goal and how we move forward as we bring on more facilities. Commissioner?
General comment, Sean. I really appreciate kind of the grinding away and getting the metrics more accurate, and I think you have every reason to be, you really have a reason to be excited about the progress that you made in the last year. And I was thinking when you were talking about Pfizer, well, that shouldn't count. That's not our operation, and we don't have any say over it other than they pay rent. So that makes perfect sense, and just trying to be more accurate. We're talking about Benton County government, and Pfizer is not part of Benton County government. So I had no idea with a handful of employees that they could use that much electricity. But
next time we have an eclipse, because they turn their servers off. As far as I can tell, you're on the right track. I mean, and just trying to figure out what Benton County is actually using, and so that's great. And this is encouraging that you have gotten better metrics than the last time you presented.
Yeah, sure. Sean, I'm sorry, Sean. No, Commissioner Weiss, did you have anything that you were wanting to ask or share on this slide?
No, good.
Great. Sean, do you mind if I pop in and make 2 comments real briefly? Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. So, Commissioners, I want you to know that this one has been a bit of a, and by this one I mean consistency with regard to how we treat our tenants within the inventory has been, I'll call it a pet project, maybe a soapbox. Sean's laughing in terms of pet projects. It's been something that I have been particularly keyed in on because and I think, this is one of the reasons why sustainability program is in the board's office, because I am aware of some of the things that we need that, are under consideration when it comes to our tenants. So when Sean started talking about the Pfizer tenant, when he was talking about, and he'll talk later about our law enforcement building, it really raised a lot of questions for me about how are we going to treat our tenants moving forward. Can we set kind of a precedent of how we're going to treat them? So one, I just want to say thank you, because it seems like the board is on board with what Sean is recommending here. The other piece that I really want to point out that I think is valuable to point out is what Sean mentioned about 4,500 being kind of that showcase or that new standard of facility for the county. So when he was talking about how over the next, let's say, 1 to 5 to 10 years, Benton County's justice system hopefully will have substantial improvements. Maybe some of those are a facility like a crisis resource center. Can we, and we being you all, the Board of Commissioners, make those sustainability principles a component of those facilities in the future, as we have done for 4500? So anyway, Sean, I think you did a great job sending those messages home. I just, from my perspective, commissioners, I think that those are two really key pieces that we discovered this year when taking a look at this data. So thank you, Sean, for that.
Thank you, Leah. And I would say yes, and just one last thing. You see that second bullet says no greenwashing. That is near and dear to my heart. Why we're talking about 4,500 is because it's going to normalize in 2 years anyway. We're just going to have this huge spike. It's not affecting anything. We are not trying to get away from our responsibility. So in this protocol, we're going to mandate that it is, in fact, we're not greenwashing. We're just making sure we're apportioning appropriately. Okay. Thank you for that. Very important. That's going to set the stage for 2 weeks on what data we're going to give you and not give you at the same time. Okay. Now, on to law enforcement. So again, quick history lesson. When we started this back in 2016-17, I was talking to Chris Wheelenberg, who was Paul Facilities Manager back then, and how we're going to apportion all this. And again, just made the tacit assumption that if we get a bill, we're in charge of it, we own it, put it in, easy peasy. So that's how we've been doing. In collaboration with Corvallis, Scott said to me very nonchalantly, he goes, hey, we're double counting law enforcement. And I said, I don't understand. He said, well, we're counting our portion, and you're counting the entire building. So both the jurisdictions are double counting, and we're actually double counting the usage. I said, okay. So then I go to Paul, and whatever happened, I must have said something that triggered him that didn't trigger last year, but I said, but we own the building. He goes, we do not own the building. And I said, I'm sorry, what now? And because of a memorandum of agreement back in 2000 and updated 2005, we co-own the building. 50% Corvallis, 50% the county. And it says that we own the land and the facility equally. Over time, it's gone into 54% Corvallis, 46% Benton County. So not unlike Ichabod Crane, I picked my head up and put it back on my shoulders because that was new, and started to go back and forth with Scott and Corvallis and Paul, and he recommends this as well, that they have control. Corvallis has control within their space. And anything on building-wide, it's a unified decision. I do think that over time, it's kind of turned into an assumption that the county is going to take care of it. But again, this is these trip-ups that we got as we were working so closely with Corvallis. All these little things started popping up. So, why am I boring you? Because it has a profound impact on our emissions. So this is right back to our total net emissions, the old way we did it by double counting and including all of law enforcement. When you take the 46% out of our facility that has the second highest, taking 4,500 out, Fairgrounds is number one, LEB is number two, just because 24 hours, it makes sense. This is about, sorry, I have my numbers, 12 to 14% reduction in our total net emissions. That is not small. So we go back to slide 3, where we're bouncing all around. We've got Fairgrounds, we have LEB bouncing. This is moving forward how the inventory is going to address law enforcement. Any questions on that? It was pretty cut and dry. It was just more or less coming to grips with something I just never knew. So anyway.
So you're pulling out just the Corvallis portion of law enforcement?
Yes, Commissioner, yes. So we took out that 54%, sorry, I'm flipping the numbers here, I'm sorry. So that we have our 46% that we're counting, Scott takes on the 54% for Corvallis. Cool? Okay. Okay, now we get on to Fairgrounds, which is a little more cut and dry. That is something that we've been trying to do. I know Commissioner we've seen for years. We're really trying to incorporate this. Some hiccups here and there, but this is now over the past year incorporating this. So anyway, we have the emissions and the usage, and we got it back to 2010. One little thing, consumer power, which powers the Fairgrounds, is considerably less carbon intensive than Pacific Power. So again, we can't be comparing apples to apples, it's completely different. But we have their coefficients in there as well. So what? Why am I telling you this? Well, obviously it's more accurate. What's really telling is that it's a great story because this has the longest solar generation, and we can really track over time what we're going to enjoy from the health center of Chintimini, 4,500, others that we're putting solar panels on now. But the more policy, the more system approach that I'm excited about is now that Natural Reserve Parks and Fairgrounds have merged. I had a conversation with Lynn back in January, February. How can we do the same thing that Public Works and Finance does with Natural Reserve Parks? Sure, we get the data going back to 2010, but we can train their staff to enter in all the utility usage from Natural Reserve Parks as an ongoing utility tracker, go back to IT, see how that's going to work out. So it's a little more complicated than just grabbing some data, but we want to set this up as a systemic approach, not just a data grab and go, so that we can really hit this hard. So that's the solar on Fairgrounds, and this is the graph. And I can walk you through it. The green line is our total usage. I apologize, we're going back to just pure electric usage. This isn't an issue, just is how much electricity we're going. So this is our total. The blue line is what we bought from Consumer Power. So that is, the difference is what the solar panels generated. It came on in mid-2011, that's why this is the big number here. It came on, I think, Consumer said June, July, something like that, and then it starts to get it. In case you're wondering, we have about this, just off the back of the envelope, this turned into about the monetary savings, about, assuming that it's the same cost per kilowatt hour, about $7,000 here, times the 9 years is $63,000. Considering this is a $40,000 bill, as we say $7,000, that's not minuscule. That's impactful, not to mention the reduction of carbon. So I just want to show you this as we move forward, and this will also be included. Any questions? Okay. So, the ultimate so what? We've been kind of building and building and building. Why am I telling you all this? It's because with this new inventory, the highest contributor that I showed you last year has swapped, rightfully so and correctly, to now electricity is now half and fleet fuel is 35%. And this obviously will increase next year when Natural Reserve Parks come on, but that will also get, so we're still fine-tuning until next year. This is really what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks. What's the biggest bang for the buck? And our climate action plan, how do we address this? And when we start talking about electricity, yes, staff can turn the lights off, and we have a role in that, but this is really, as I was talking about, lead, facilities, solar panels, those to turn the dial massively is going to be a lot on facilities. We have a huge impact on fleet fuel. Are we going back and forth, driving facility to facility, these kinds of things? And that's the next topic, and that was enlightening over the past years of COVID. We understand just how impactful that is. So before we move in there, this is kind of the ending of the inventory section. Did anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. COVID. All right. So let's get into just the numbers, but then also the 50,000-foot policy implications. With that first slide that I showed you, with our carbon emissions net, was a reduction of about 20%. Why I'm telling you that is, it is just, I don't know, creepy is the right word or whatever, but it is very, very consistent. I usually don't like numbers being this tight, but they are. We talked about the total electricity use with 17% reduction, again, without FISER. And these are the pure electricity usages of the facilities. It's funny talking to staff, some people are thinking, oh, COVID was here, no one's in the building, so it's zero. Not quite. Like my experience back in Avery, if there's 3 people upstairs, the lights are on, or whether there's 40 people upstairs, the lights are on. That's why you're not seeing a huge reduction in these. The lights are still on no matter, it's just a low amount of staff. BOC makes a little more sense. That I'm attributing to IT upstairs, servers, cooling. That's why it's not as much as the 20%. And the 6% of law enforcement, that also makes sense for two things. It's not that big because they're 24/7. However, Paul did say that they implemented some environmental controls and also reduced that usage. We're going to get that in 2 weeks, but that kind of explains that. Same thing with fleet. This is very insightful. Jen did a great job of working with Keith to see what kind of a point in time, 3 or 4 months before COVID, 3 or 4 months after COVID, without COVID, to kind of see what our fleet fuel numbers were, how they changed. Countywide, we went down 19%. Departments like assessment, BOC, other more administrative, we're not going out anymore. We're not driving around. The biggest challenge is that is offset by the two biggest departments, which is Public Works and Natural Letters and Parks. Because of COVID restrictions or recommendations, when they drove somewhere, each person had to drive a separate car, truck, and because they couldn't be in the same cab together. That's why you see that big tick up in those two departments. So those kind of offset, but it is telling that with COVID, we're not driving around enough as much. That really does have an impact. And then we can get into the so what of COVID. I'm sorry. Hello. I'm sorry.
On that last slide, what is this month by month, or what are we comparing?
I apologize. The electricity use is yearly. That's all of 2020.
Okay. That's compared to 2019?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. The difference between 2019 and 2020. Thank you for the clarification, sir. That's what the electricity use is. The fleet was more of a point in time that we ran with before and after COVID, and how we are driving changed a facility to facility with day. This isn't commuting. This is how we drive around between facilities. So this is more of a point in time, and I will share with you the fleet in 2 weeks yearly. But we found that this kind of just shows the immediate impact between electricity use and fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Israel, a few weeks ago, you sent Jen and I a wonderful article about how electricity during COVID is kind of a shell game. That is to say, yes, our the county's electricity use went down 20%. But I sit before you with both of my same monitors, my laptop, my handy-dandy mouse, my keyboard, my speakers. Everything's the same. And I see you, Commissioner, I think you're probably at home as well as many other people on. So the exact amount of same emissions are going into the earth as they were before. It's just the county is not footing the bill for that. So we need to be aware that, yes, we went down 20%, but sorry, everything's the same, especially if we're on Pacific Power, absolutely nothing changed. So I just want to be clear that, yeah, it looks great for the county, but that's not necessarily great for the earth. So just so we're clear on that one, on the kind of shell game principle. That fleet fuel is not a shell game. That fleet fuel is, we didn't drive, which means those carbon molecules are just sitting as gasoline in a gas tank. So that is for real. Even more profound is commuting between our home and our work, assuming most of us work 5 days a week in an office. Jen did a great job. You all received the survey of your travel patterns, your commuting patterns between the before and after. Late last week, it was at 80%. Staff says they are now driving 20,400 miles less a week, which means about 568 times a year. Side note, what I said on Friday, the second I said it on Friday for our run-through, I apologize for that ridiculous error on that bullet. Great data, wrong equation, sorry. But that's about the times using the same equation that Corvallis uses. That is not small. Considering our total net emissions right now is about 2,200, that's hanging around 25% of our total load. So why am I boring you with this? Same thing with the facilities and this big picture. COVID is telling us about our policies, our human resources policies, how we do this. I will share with you the fall of 2019 before, and Linda McGraw comes to the Resource Efficiency Committee, and she's like, hey, we got this kind of thing where you talk to each other online, and it's called GoToMeeting, and they're like, wow, wow, I've never heard of that before. And we actually, and Jay can attest, we had go-to buddies, and we're trying to figure out how to use this, and like all of 8 people started using it. Of course, that was on March 12th. Come March 17th, this is standard operating procedures. Similarly, things like teleworking. I'm throwing no shade. I'm just saying I had the exact same experience in Maryland, being laughed at back there about things like teleworking, work from home, 410, these kinds of things. Laughed at Salem and laughed in here about, oh, you can't telework. What was laughable and trivial on March 13th of last year, Loretta, Tracy, Mary all sent as official policy that Monday. So as we start talking about these policies, just having the imagination of how can we not return back to where we were and using COVID, this horrible, tragic gift, insight to how can we do things differently, especially using a lens of greenhouse gas. Any questions on the COVID part? Nope. Okay. Either I'm doing a great job or a terrible job, but that's okay. We'll finish it.
I think you're doing a great job, Sean. I just wanted to just jump in and say, commissioners, you know, we wanted to spend some time on the COVID context piece because, you know, I think that it is really easy to assume like, oh, we were closed and we were at home, so it's going to be this big drop. But as Sean and Jen and I took a look at these different pieces, it was really interesting to me to see the nuance actually about how COVID did impact our operations and how it might not make intuitive sense how we had thought initially.
And I need to apologize to my boss there for even talking about reconvening policy oversight committee. Didn't mean to make you twitch there, Lillian. Okay. Winding down here. We did want to give you just a quick splash of renewables. We didn't really touch on it. It does have impacts in the inventory, like we were saying. If Fiserv leaves and the solar panels and there's no one in there, this does have impact on the inventory itself and how it is. So just a real quick splash. We had 388,000, we purchased last year 388,000 kilowatt hours. Checking notes, that's 103 tons of emissions saved. Exciting for me, when I started 5 years ago, it was just a fairground. That's all. Now we have 4,500 has solar panels on it. The health center over at Gentility has it. Lincoln is, like, I think Paul has been saying, like, weeks from now we'll have those. I don't know when it's actually going to get linked up. And then our program getting state funding for the law enforcement going and those solar panels coming on. I don't know the horizon of that, but in the coming months. So this is very exciting. In a relatively short amount of time, in just 2 years, we really are ramping up with your leadership and commitment our solar generation. So what of that is that this is just a shameless plug. Our program put in $10,000 to increase our purchasing of Blue Sky to make sure that we're ramping up with the addition of 4,500, take Fiserv out of it. But we're building on. So if we're going to do this, this is what we're going to dive into in 2 weeks. But last year you saw how much we're spending, how much we're generating, how much we're purchasing, and just getting that line filled in.
Sean?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Real quick, just in case commissioners, I don't get to say this afternoon, I do want to note that we purchased 10% in the prior biennium, and so we are looking to increase our commitment to 25% in this forthcoming biennium. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Leah. I thank you for grounding us. That's perfect. Thank you. Again, as we said last year, and as we'll say in a couple of weeks, we have no chance until we're carbon neutral in electricity to reaching our goal, especially with future plans to bring on additional facilities. So stay in the stage. So here's our last slide to, again, bridge, kind of do a recap, and then bridge the gap further in 2 weeks. One, this whole process of inventory, of the inventory and all this really just kind of drives home our stock of facilities. Are we building more? Are we selling what we're not at? It's a lens for you, commissioners and policymakers, to think about. Because if we keep them on, that means it's harder and harder to get below 2010. And then also, across the board, maximizing every single chance we can. Every renovation, every new facility, every purchase, maximizing our resource, because if you don't do it out of the gate, it's going to get really harder as we move forward. We talked about the tenants, and thank you for that guidance. This is really going to help us create a more specific protocol. But before then, I started this conversation, I'll end this conversation. We can't do this without this utility tracker, the commitment from all the departments and the capturing of data. Jen and I, as compatriot over in Corvallis, Scott, he has to do this every 2 years because it's just so laborious. He does not enjoy the same tools that we have at the county. We just talked about COVID and some of the policies that we're working on, and again, going back repeatedly about the decision-making lens, about whether it's staff, big picture, small picture, all of that. And then finally, one thing we haven't talked about this inventory is we now have, we can potentially add additional sources. So Corvallis has refrigerants. They actually, and actually Commissioner Roger was fascinated with your biology background. The wastewater treatment plant, not the electricity, but just the biological activities of waste emit greenhouse gases. So that's one that they use. Something more germane to us would be commuting and purchasing. So we're going to be looking and exploring over the next year. How can we do it? Can we do it? How can we capture this with academic rigor and integrity to make sure that we're confident about this? And with that, and I'm sorry, and then Jen's really going to dive into in 2 weeks, the alignment between the emissions and the climate action plan, something we've kind of addressed in the past, but we're going to be piercingly focused on that in 2 weeks about that alignment. So that's the ways of program are maturing on that. And with that, it's to be continued for 2 weeks, and any questions you may have.
Questions? So this was a fantastic primer and a really good overview of the maturation of the program. And I think that's what I'd like to call it now, is a program, because we started out with a part-time effort as part of your time and an intern, and it feels like it's now an organizational emphasis, and that's fantastic. That's where we wanted it to go. So really appreciate it.
That is our ultimate compliment, Commissioner. I sincerely appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Just a comment, and looking forward to more information in a couple weeks, but we have the basic information that we need, and now it's time to make sure that all our efforts, all our departments are on board. I think of Jen Brown. She was briefly in the commissioner's office, and I think every department needs a Jen Brown. I remember by her workstation she had 4 or 5 waste paper baskets, and one was film and one was paper, and they kept getting smaller till you got to this one goes to the landfill, and some tiny little thimble, and that was a nice graphic image and practical effort. So I'm looking forward to more information in a couple weeks, but this is exciting. And you mentioned the fairgrounds solar project from a decade ago, and my wife Betty was on the fair board at that time, and just shows you need to be opportunistic. There was a grant that was available, and I think we applied for it, and we don't have a building to put panels on. There are some high-powered people that are connected with the fairgrounds. Eric Thompson's name comes to mind, and I think within a week he had raised the money for the building to put the solar panels on. So, and it's nice now we have a pretty graph of a decade of what that means to the fairgrounds and to the county.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Yeah. And thank you for mentioning Jen's work. Next time, we're going to hear a little bit more about how Jen is working to create mini Jen Browns in each department with resource efficiency committees. So thank you for recognizing her as well. But yeah, Sean, are there any other final closing comments that you have before we lead up to next week?
You know, just thank you for the opportunity to, as we said, there's no way we could have done this in a single meeting, setting the stage, and just mad props to Michael for his work and really fine-tuning this, and to Corvallis and Scott, and this really was a collaborative effort with Public Works and everything. It was just really exciting to lay a foundation I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and give me the opportunity to share that with you, all these little policy applications that came out of the process. So, again, always appreciate of your time, and I look forward to diving into the details in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to it also. And at this point in time, we are going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will be back to dive into our business meeting. in our seats and I'm assuming ready to roll. The first item on our business meeting calendar is to consider consent calendar, which includes 3 items: the letter of commitment for Justice Reinvestment Grant, approval of 2 sets of minutes, April 23rd, 2019, and March 23rd, 2021. Looks like we have 1 set of minutes, Nancy, that you will have to not be involved in. So I suggest that we pull the item 5.2 from the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar, including only items 5.1 and 5.3? So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye. 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 And next, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the April 23rd, 2019 minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you for that swift piece of business. Next, we have a series of proclamations, and the first one is in regards to the Public Service Recognition Week, and I will be reading that one. So without further ado, before the Board of County Commissioners for the State of Oregon, for the County of Benton, will be reading Proclamation P2021-013. During Public Service Recognition Week, we express our gratitude to all of our county employees for their dedication to mission, service, and stewardship. These individuals deliver results for those who live, work, study, play, and worship in Benton County, often without a claim. We join the federal, state, and local governments nationwide that are participating in Public Service Recognition Week and has been since its inception in 1985. Government is the way we come together to provide the services and amenities that promote the well-being of our communities in Benton County. We practice our motto, at your service every day, while keeping in mind our core values of equity and help in all actions. Each of Benton County's 696 employees, whether they work a part or full-time schedule from an office, their home, or in the field, provide valuable service to the community. County employees serve in a multitude of roles, and many expanded their work to other sectors over the past year to support our communities. They keep the water running in our service districts, provide for orderly community development, keep our roads and bridges safe, provide parks and natural areas for recreation, prosecute suspected lawbreakers, provide for public safety, ensure fair elections, support technological advancement and security, and provide physical and behavioral health care for all. Serving during the COVID-19 pandemic has spotlighted our emergency planners and public health practitioners who contain disease transmission, support community health, and provide high-quality, science-based public information. We have been honored to serve alongside other public servants as we distribute support to our communities. The vaccine distribution and emergency operations have involved staff and volunteers from many county offices and many partnerships in the region. Public service also includes the community members who have supported all of us every day. They include teachers, doctors, scientists, train conductors, nurses, safety inspectors, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, volunteers, and countless other occupations. Together, we continue to support our communities and are committed to improving our work and centering equity, health, and sustainability. Now, therefore, in light of the extraordinary effort all staff put forth every day, and particularly in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Benton County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims May 2nd to 8th as Public Service Recognition Week. I would welcome a motion to accept the proclamation.
I will move to approve proclamation P2021-013.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye. 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 And a sincere thank you to all of our employees. This has been quite the year. We appreciate each and every one of you. Okay, moving onward. The next proclamation is National Public Works Week, May 16th to 22nd. And we're joined by Gary Stockhoff for that proclamation.
Good morning, everybody. Appreciate your time today, and I will set about doing this. In the matter of proclaiming May 16th to 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week in Benton County, proclamation number P 2021-010. Public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to sustainable communities and to health, safety, and well-being of the people of the county. And such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who plan, build, operate, and maintain the transportation system, land records, water supply and sewage systems, motor pool and public buildings and structures countywide. These professionals represent our local unit of government, and it is in the public interest for citizens and civic leaders of this county to gain knowledge and maintain a progressive interest in and understanding of public works and public works programs in the community. And 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week sponsored by American Public Works Association. The theme this year is Stronger Together. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners proclaim May 16th to 22nd, 2021 as Public Works Week in Benton County and invites everyone to join us in the American Public Works Association to learn more about the vital importance of public works, the dedication of public works employees, and to celebrate their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't get to have a barbecue together this year, though.
No, we'll save that for next year. Next year,
I'm hoping. Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to proclaim May 16th to 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week in Benton County.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much, Gary, and to all of your team. Moving next to the matter of proclaiming May 2021 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Lily and Neville.
Good morning, Commissioners. So, good morning, Johan. So, Joe has asked me to read this month's Asian American and Pacific Islander Proclamation because I'm Samoan. So, it is my honor to read this month's proclamation. I'm going to take my mask off so you can hear me and I can breathe well. The month of May brings a national celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI heritage. Since May of 1979, a week in May was designated to honoring the heritage of Asian/Pacific Americans. The length of time has expanded through Congress, and in 1990, the week was expanded to Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The month of May was chosen to honor two specific dates, May 7th, 1843, when the first Japanese immigrants arrived in the United States, and May 10th, 1869, the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, which was laid primarily by Chinese immigrants. This May, we celebrate centuries of Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are the fastest growing racial group in America and the second fastest group in Oregon, with over 100,000 people. In Benton County, approximately 7.5% of the population identifies as Asian, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. The Asian diaspora covers a wide variety of people, cultures, languages, religions, and experiences. We emphasize the importance of celebrating all cultures from the Asian diaspora, including East Asia, for example, or i.e. Korea, Japan, Chinese, Southeast Asia, i.e. the Philippines, Laos, Vietnam, South Asia, i.e. India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, and the Pacific Islands, i.e. Hawaii and Samoa and Fiji. Benton County has been home to many Asian American and Pacific Islander people and communities. In 1880, Chinese immigrants established a small Corvallis Chinatown within the Avery Helm Historic District that was unfortunately lost in a fire in the 1920s. In the early 1800s, Hawaiians came to what is now Oregon to participate in fur trade. And today, we have over 50 individual cultural groups from throughout Asia and the Pacific Islands living in Oregon. We celebrate centuries of cultural connections between Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We also celebrate our visitors from other countries who are studying, working, and living in our communities. Acknowledging the heritage of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders includes acknowledging our history of discrimination and exclusion. Oregon Constitution forbade Chinese refugees and immigrants from settling in Oregon. National and state laws continued to push xenophobia that harmed our AAPI community. We acknowledge the exclusionary practices and laws within Oregon that have historically harmed Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. The pandemic and recent events of violence have shown that we must continue our work toward making our communities safe and welcoming for all. We show solidarity and support for all Asian American and Pacific Islanders, not just during May, but every day. Therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Benton County, and all community members are encouraged to join in this observance and celebration.
Thank you, Lilia. I would welcome a motion to approve the proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
I'll move to proclaim May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Benton County.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll, Johan, did you want to mention, are we going to have a panel of speakers this month of folks with Asian American or Pacific Islander background?
Yes, that's still in the works, but I'll be coming soon.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lilia, for reading that.
Next, we have a proclamation of May 2021 as Drug Treatment Court Month. And Chris, you definitely don't look like Kate Cresswell, but we're happy to have you here. And Judge Donahue, welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you for having us this morning. I appreciate the time. This is a proclamation regarding drug court. In the matter of proclaiming May 2021 as National Drug Treatment Court Month in Benton County. Drug treatment courts have served over 1.5 million individuals and are now recognized as the most successful criminal justice intervention in our nation's history. There are now more than 4,000 treatment courts nationwide, and treatment courts are the cornerstone of justice reform sweeping the nation. Treatment courts have been restoring lives and families for more than 3 decades and save an average of $6,000 for every individual they serve. Treatment courts significantly improve substance use disorder treatment outcomes, substantially reduce addiction and related crimes, and do so at less expense than any other criminal justice strategy. Treatment courts improve education, employment, housing, and financial stability, promote family reunification, reduce foster care placements, and increase the rate of addicted mothers delivering babies who are fully drug-free. Treatment courts facilitate community-wide partnerships, bringing together public safety and public health professionals in the fight against addiction and crime. Drug treatment courts demonstrate that when one person rises out of substance use and crime, we all rise. And the time has come to put a treatment court within reach of every eligible person in need. Therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that May 2021 is Drug Treatment Court Month in Benton County, and recognizing the significant contributions treatment courts have made toward reducing substance abuse, crime, and recidivism while saving valuable resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a motion?
I move to proclaim May 2021 as National Drug Treatment Court Month in Benton County.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye. 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 Judge Donahue, would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to thank the county for its partnership. It's been actually a year of we've transitioned over to services with Benton County Health Department now, as opposed to our previous provider. And I think the drug treatment court here in Benton County's kind of moved and transitioned from a period of growth and expansion to put our co-occurring disorder track together to now looking at that long-term sustainability and partnership with the county. And I think this has been a very productive year, even with the COVID restrictions and shutdowns and all of the barriers that's created. We've had a lot of progress and growth, and I'd like to thank the county for that, and I look forward to a continued productive partnership with the county serving the folks in our criminal justice system here in Benton County with drug and alcohol and mental health issues. And I think that this is going to be a partnership that's going to go a long way towards being able to do that. So thank you very much, and I look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you, and we do as well. It's important work. Okay, next item. We are moving on to, May is such an interesting month. It's such an interesting soup of different focuses. Next is Military Appreciation Month in Benton County. Ryan.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you so much for inviting me today to read these proclamations. My sincere apologies again for not being able to be here last week. I was doing my part to try and protect everybody from the spread of the coronavirus by getting my vaccination. So thank you for having me here today. The first proclamation that I'll be reading is in the matter of proclaiming May 2021 as Military Appreciation Month in Benton County, proclamation number 2021-011. Every year since 1999, the President issues a proclamation reminding Americans to pay tribute to those that have sacrificed so much for our freedom. This tradition began in 1999 when the United States Congress first designated the month of May as National Military Appreciation Month, calling all Americans to remember those who gave their lives in defense of freedom and to honor the men and women of all of our armed services who have served and are now serving our nation. Regardless of the specific branch of military one has served or is still serving, they have taken an oath to be disciplined in mind and body, never quit, and to act as guardians for our freedom and democracy. Their code to live by is that of honor, courage, and commitment. Our community has the deepest gratitude toward all veterans and service members and their families, and honors the many people of Benton County who are serving and have served our nation. And Benton County extends its heartfelt gratitude and goodwill to service members of the Benton County U.S. Army National Guard and the personnel of all armed services who have earned the respect and admiration of a grateful nation. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as a month set aside in Benton County for honoring our veterans, service members, and their families in observance of their contribution to our community, our state, and our nation. Adopted this 4th day of May 2021 and signed same day.
Thank you, Ryan. Do I hear a motion?
I move to proclaim May 2021 as Military Appreciation Month in Benton County.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Are there any special events that you're aware of, Ryan, that will be taking place in the area?
I'm not aware of any. Obviously, COVID has put the brakes on most in-person events. I will be happy to forward anything your direction if anything percolates up.
Thank you. And next, the proclamation for May 2021 as Older Americans Month.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. So I will be reading the proclamation in the matter of proclaiming May 2021 as Older Americans Month in Benton County, proclamation number P2021-012. Benton County includes a growing number of older Americans who enrich our community through their diverse life experiences, and Benton County is committed to strengthening our community by connecting with and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and acknowledging their many valuable contributions to society. And we recognize the importance of bringing together all generations and engaging in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being for the benefit of all. And our community can enhance the lives of older Americans in our community by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community events and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim May 2021 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time during this month to recognize older adults and the people who serve them as essential and valuable members of our community.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I move to proclaim May 2021 as Older Americans Month in Benton County.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, very much for that. And likewise, I'm assuming that we aren't unaware of any particular special events this month for older Americans. But we will look forward to celebrations next year.
Thank you, Commissioners, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is to consider you passing along our logo to add to a letter of support for extension services per Carolyn Ashton's request. And unfortunately, I am having some technical difficulty. I can't get my Outlook to react and conduct a search for me, so I cannot see the actual request. If one of you has that queued up, that would be really helpful.
I do. I saw this. Nope. I had it. Come in yesterday, and it sounds like something that I'm very willing to support.
Mr. Rosero, I did just forward that to you a moment ago.
Yeah, it's not a matter of whether I have it. It's that my Outlook is unstable and I cannot get to it. So,
do you need me to read it? Do you need me to read anything from it at all, or?
Yeah, you might just read the request briefly, and just so that we are all fully aware. Thank you.
Okay, bear with me, and I will read it here momentarily. Let's see, it's addressed to the commissioners as well as myself, and it says potential legislative funding that would include Benton County 4-H. Fructose and OSU Open Campus was flatlined in the governor's recommended budget. A coalition of agriculture and natural resource organizations jointly signed a letter which communicated their support for the work of OSU Extension Service and other statewide public service arms of the university. Consequently, a similar letter attached for your reference, highlighting the OSU Extension Service's significant contribution to the positive youth development programs of the state, has been developed for signature by our community partners. If your organization is willing to be a signer of the letter, she would appreciate having a digital file of our Benton County government logo sent to her, and she apologizes for the short turnaround time
and their goal is to get 100 partner organizations to share their logos in order to support the draft letter. And if you would like me to read that, I can do that as well.
Nancy, have you had a chance to read the letter? Are you comfortable with that? I would entertain a motion of support if we are ready to do that.
I'm ready to make a motion to support the OSU extension letter supporting, asking for a funding increase to keep that intact.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Hello, Alyssa.
Hello, Commissioners. I was just coming on to say that I'm happy to send along the proper file if you could provide me with the contact information.
That would be great.
Alyssa, I'll forward that to you right now.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, we are going to move on to executive session, and we will need to clear the virtual as well as the physical room at the board office. We first, so I think I will just call for a break, a recess, and then we will go into executive session under ORS 192.6602E. So if someone could, at the board office, could let us know when the room is clear, that would be fantastic.
This conference is no